All right, let's jump right into this deep dive. We're taking a look at medicinal mushrooms and their potential for brain health.
Sure.
You've been researching how these fungi to impact, well, everything from inflammation to neuroprotection, especially for conditions like PTSD and TBI. And you've got two great resources here, a research paper called Exploring the Neuroprotective Potency of Medicinal Mushrooms, and an article called Medicinal Mushrooms for Mental Health and Brain Injury. Seems like you're going deep into the science behind these ancient healers.
Yeah, and one of the key things that both these sources talk about is this idea of neuroinflammation as kind of a major player in all sorts of brain-related issues. You know, we tend to think about inflammation like in our joints or muscles, but the brain is actually really vulnerable to its damaging effects.
So it's not like just feeling inflamed, like in your
Oh.
brain, right? What does neuroinflammation actually mean in this context?
Yeah, it's way more complex than just a feeling. Neuroinflammation actually involves chronic activation of microglia,
Hmm.
which are the brain's resident immune cells. And microglia are essential, by the way, for protecting the brain from infections and injury. They're kind of like the first line of defense, cleaning up cellular debris, fighting off pathogens. But when they're constantly on high alert and releasing inflammatory chemicals, called cytokines, it can actually start to damage healthy brain cells and disrupt neuronal function. It's like if you have a security system that's so sensitive that it sets off alarms even when there's no real threat.
Okay, so our brains are under constant attack from these inflammatory signals.
Right.
And that can lead to, anything from cognitive decline
Mm.
to mood disorders.
Hmm.
And so this is where the medicinal mushrooms come in. They're not just masking the symptoms, they're actually addressing the root cause.
Exactly, yeah. These mushrooms have all sorts of bioactive compounds in them that can actually modulate the immune response in the brain,
Hmm.
helping to calm those overactive microglia and reduce the inflammatory cascade. It's not about like completely suppressing the immune system. It's more about restoring that balance and promoting a healthy inflammatory response.
Fascinating. So you've got this whole lineup of these brain-boosting mushrooms here. Lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail, chaga, cordyceps, and maitake.
Mhm.
And it seems like each one has, like, its own set of superpowers when it comes to brain health.
Yeah, and while they all, they do share some common mechanisms, they each bring a unique profile of bioactive compounds to the table. Let's start with lion's mane, which has been getting a lot of attention lately for its potential to stimulate nerve growth factor, or NGF.
Yeah, this one really stood out to me. NGS is basically like fertilizer for brain cells, right?
Yeah.
It helps them grow, connect, and thrive.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. NGF plays a really crucial role in the survival, growth, and differentiation of neurons, particularly in the hippocampus, which is that brain region that's essential for memory and learning. And what's remarkable about lion's mane is that it contains these compounds called arenosines, which studies have shown can actually cross the blood-brain barrier and stimulate the production of NGF in the brain. So this has led to a lot of excitement about its potential for addressing neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, where the loss of neurons is a key factor.
So it's not just protecting the existing brain cells, it's potentially helping the brain generate new ones. That's incredible.
It's a fascinating area of research, and a lot of it is still in the preclinical stage, but the initial findings are, very promising. But lion's mane is just one piece of the puzzle. Another mushroom that shows up a lot in your research is reishi, which is often called the mushroom of immortality in traditional Chinese medicine.
And this one's all about calming things down, right?
Right.
Relieving stress and anxiety.
Exactly. Reishi has been used for centuries to,
Yeah.
promote relaxation, improve sleep, and reduce anxiety. And we're just now starting to understand the scientific basis for these effects. Reishi contains triterpenes, which are bioactive compounds that have been shown to interact with GABA receptors in the brain. And GABA is, the main inhibitory neurotransmitter
Right.
responsible for calming the nervous system and reducing feelings of anxiety and stress.
So it's like reishi is giving our brains that extra GABA, helping us hit the chill button.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And what's interesting is that reishi doesn't just work on the neurotransmitter level. It also has potent anti-inflammatory effects,
Yeah.
which helps to kind of reduce the overall noise and stress in the brain.
It seems like we're just scratching the surface of what these mushrooms can
Oh,
do.
absolutely. We've only touched on 2 of the mushrooms in your research, and there's so much more to explore. For example, turkey tail is known for its powerful immune-modulating properties thanks to its rich polysaccharide content, particularly a compound called PSK, which has been extensively studied for its anti-cancer effects.
And cordyceps, that one's got a pretty unique origin story, right? Just doesn't grow on insects.
Yeah, cordyceps is it's a fascinating example of the symbiotic relationship between fungi and insects. This mushroom actually parasitizes the larvae of certain moths and eventually replaces the host's tissue with its own fruiting body. It's a bit gruesome, but it just goes to show you how adaptable and diverse the fungal kingdom is.
Okay, that's both amazing and slightly terrifying.
Yeah.
But what does Cordyceps, aside from its bizarre life cycle, what does it bring to the table for brain health?
Well, cordyceps is known for its energizing and performance-enhancing properties. It's been traditionally used to combat fatigue, improve stamina, and enhance cognitive function. Research suggests that it might work by improving oxygen utilization and boosting ATP production in cells, which is essential for energy metabolism. There's also evidence that it can protect the brain from oxidative stress, which is a major contributor to neurodegeneration.
So it's kind of like a natural energy drink for the brain,
Yeah.
but without the jitters and crash.
Kind of, yeah. It provides a more sustained and balanced form of energy support, along with those neuroprotective benefits. It's particularly interesting for its potential to enhance athletic performance, reduce fatigue, and support cognitive function in older adults.
This is fascinating stuff. So we've got lion's mane stimulating nerve growth, reishi calming the nervous system, turkey tail modulating the immune response, and cordyceps boosting energy and protecting against oxidative stress. It's like a whole team of brain-boosting superheroes. But what about chaga and maitake? What roles do they play in this mushroom orchestra?
Well, chaga is often called the king of medicinal mushrooms. It grows on birch trees in cold climates and has been used for centuries in Russia and other parts of Northern Europe to support overall health and longevity.
Okay, so chaga's got a reputation. What's the science behind it?
Well, chaga is an antioxidant powerhouse. It contains extremely high levels of beneficial compounds like melanin, betulinic acid, and polysaccharides, which can scavenge free radicals and protect cells from oxidative damage. This is particularly important for the brain, which is very susceptible to oxidative stress because of its high metabolic rate.
So chaga is kind of like a shield against the wear and tear of everyday life on our brains.
Exactly. And there's emerging evidence that chaga may also have anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective effects, making it a promising candidate for supporting brain health as we age.
And what about maitake? What's its superpower?
Maitake, which means dancing mushroom in Japanese, is known for its immune modulating and blood sugar regulating properties.
Blood sugar. What does that have to do with the brain?
Oh, that's a great question. It turns out that maintaining stable blood sugar levels is crucial for optimal brain function. Fluctuations in blood sugar can lead to cognitive impairment, mood swings, and even increase the risk of neurodegenerative diseases. And matic contains compounds that can help regulate blood sugar levels, potentially protecting the brain from these negative effects.
So matique is kind of keeping our brains fueled and functioning smoothly.
Exactly. And like many of the other mushrooms we've talked about, it also has anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, further supporting brain health.
Wow, each of these mushrooms is like a specialist, targeting different aspects of brain function. But one of your sources mentioned a specific blend of these mushrooms called NeuroShield, which is being researched for its effects on veterans with TBI. Tell me more about that.
Well, NeuroShield is a fascinating example of how we can leverage the synergistic power of these mushrooms to address complex health challenges. The idea is that by combining these mushrooms, each with its unique set of benefits, we can create a more potent and holistic effect than using them individually.
So it's not about finding the best mushroom, it's about finding the right combination for specific needs.
Exactly. And in the case of TBI, which often involves this really complex cascade of damage, both at the cellular level and in terms of overall brain function, a multifaceted approach is essential.
This NeuroShield blend, aimed at helping veterans with TBI, sounds so promising. It feels like TBI is often this hidden wound of war, with long-term consequences that are so hard to treat.
Absolutely, yeah. The invisible wounds of war are just as real and debilitating as physical injuries. And you're right, they can be incredibly challenging to treat with, conventional therapies. This is where the research on NeuroShield is so important.
So going back to NeuroShield, what makes this blend so well suited for TBI?
Well, if we think back to that idea of synergy, where each mushroom is working to address a different aspect of brain health, we can start to see why NeuroShield is so promising. TBI often leads to this really complex cascade of damage, impacting the brain both on a cellular level and disrupting overall function. It's not just about reducing inflammation, it's about protecting the neurons that survived and potentially stimulating the growth of new ones. And that's where this unique combination of mushrooms in NeuroShield comes in.
It's like you're assembling a team of experts, each with their own specialization, to tackle this complex problem.
Exactly. So take lion's mane, for example. Its ability to stimulate NGF could be key for repairing those damaged neural pathways that are often affected in TBI. And research suggests that cordyceps can enhance mitochondrial function, which is essential for energy production in cells. And that's incredibly important for a brain that's trying to heal.
Right, because TBI can really disrupt
Yeah.
the brain's energy balance,
Mhm.
leading to fatigue, difficulty thinking clearly, even cell death. So supporting mitochondrial health seems crucial for recovery.
You got it. And remember, turkey tail, well, it contains polysaccharide K, PSK, and studies show that it can actually protect neurons from damage caused by inflammation and oxidative stress, which are common after a TBI.
So each mushroom is offering a different layer of protection and support. What's really interesting to me is that researchers are actually conducting clinical trials with veterans to see how effective NeuroShield is in a real-world setting.
I know, it's so cool. This is what makes this research so compelling. It's like bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and modern science. And one of the key things they're looking at is its impact on inflammation. The study that was mentioned in one of your sources, it's actually going to measure levels of inflammatory markers in veterans before and after treatment with NeuroField.
That's a huge step. They're not just relying on anecdotal evidence, they're putting it to the test scientifically. And if the results are positive, this could have such a significant impact on how we treat TBI, not just in veterans, but in anyone who suffered a brain injury.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not just about treating the physical injury, it's also about addressing the mental and emotional impact that often comes with TBI.
Exactly, because conditions like depression,
Hmm.
anxiety, PTSD, they're frequently seen in individuals who've experienced a TBI.
Right, and if you think back to what we discussed about neurotransmitters, mushrooms like reishi and cordyceps can actually influence levels of serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, all of which are so crucial for regulating mood, motivation, and stress response. The trauma of war, coupled with the physical and cognitive challenges of brain injury, it can create a perfect storm for mental health issues.
So these mushrooms are offering a more holistic approach to healing, addressing both the physical and psychological wounds. One thing that was really fascinating to me in the sources was this connection between neuroinflammation and the effectiveness of psychedelic-assisted therapies. It seems kind of counterintuitive that inflammation could hinder these therapies.
Yeah, it is a surprising finding at first. However, when you consider how psychedelic therapies actually work, by influencing neurotransmitter systems and neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to change and adapt, it kind of makes sense. You see, if the brain is in a constant state of inflammation, it's almost like trying to rewire a circuit board that's constantly being short-circuited.
That's a great analogy. So basically, neuroinflammation is creating a sort of interference in the brain, making it harder for those psychedelic signals to get through and have their intended effect.
Exactly. And this is something researchers are really starting to look into. Could addressing this underlying inflammation actually enhance the effectiveness of psychedelic-assisted therapies?
Yeah, this brings up so many questions. Like, does this mean that everyone considering psychedelic-assisted therapy
Mm.
should be screened for inflammation?
That's definitely a possibility that's being considered. And there's already some evidence to support that idea. That research paper you mentioned actually highlights that. Pre-treating patients with anti-inflammatory interventions, including medicinal mushrooms, by the way, could potentially improve outcomes for those undergoing psychedelic-assisted therapy.
That's amazing. It's like you're priming the canvas before you start painting to make sure you get the best results. As psychedelic therapies become more mainstream, it seems like understanding the role of inflammation and how to address it will be crucial for really maximizing their therapeutic potential.
Absolutely. And this opens up so many exciting possibilities for the future of mental health treatment.
We've covered so much ground. I think we need to take a moment to digest all this information. And when we come back, let's try to distill what all of this means for you, the listener, and how this knowledge can be practically applied. All right, so we've gone pretty deep into this world of medicinal mushrooms, understanding how neuroinflammation impacts the brain, exploring their potential to address TBI, PTSD. But what does it all mean for you? How can you actually apply all this knowledge?
Well, the main takeaway here is that these mushrooms offer a really powerful toolkit for supporting brain health. And it's not just theoretical. We're talking about real, tangible benefits that are backed up by, ongoing research.
Right. It's not just ancient folklore anymore. We're actually seeing how science is validating what traditional practices have known for centuries.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is that these mushrooms are, they're widely available. You don't need a prescription to start exploring their potential benefits.
That's a good point. whether it's incorporating them into your diet, taking them as supplements, or even brewing them into teas. There are lots of different ways to, explore the world of medicinal mushrooms. Of course, it's always a good idea to talk to a healthcare professional, especially if you have any underlying health conditions or are taking medications.
Absolutely. Informed exploration is key. And one thing that's really stuck with me throughout this whole deep dive is that concept of synergy. How these mushrooms often work best in combination, complementing and enhancing each other's strengths.
Yeah, exactly. Just like a well-coordinated team. Each mushroom brings its unique strengths to the table, and when they're combined, they create a more potent and holistic effect.
So it's not about searching for that like best mushroom. It's more about finding the right combination for your needs and goals. And research like the NeuroShield study is so valuable because it's helping us understand how those specific blends can target specific challenges. Speaking of research, one of the sources mentioned that the NeuroShield study is going to be using a nanoliposomal form of the mushroom blend. Can you explain what that means and why it matters?
Sure. So, nanoliposomal technology, it's this cutting-edge method for delivering nutrients more effectively. It basically encapsulates the beneficial compounds from the mushrooms in these tiny fat-soluble particles that can easily pass through cell membranes.
So it's like giving those compounds a VIP pass
Yeah.
to get to where they need to go in the body. Does that also mean you need a lower dose to get the benefits?
Exactly. This technology can significantly increase the bioavailability and absorption of those mushroom compounds, potentially making them even more effective. It's really amazing how technology and ancient wisdom are merging to create these new possibilities for healing.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to something that really made me think. We talked about how neuroinflammation can actually hinder the effectiveness of psychedelic-assisted therapies. And this raises a crucial question for the future of mental health treatment. As these therapies become more mainstream, what are the implications of this connection between inflammation and their effectiveness?
That's a great question. If inflammation can reduce how well these therapies work, then wouldn't it make sense that addressing it beforehand would be essential to unlocking their full potential? It's like preparing the soil before planting a seed. We want to create that best possible environment for healing.
And maybe medicinal mushrooms with their potent anti-inflammatory properties
Hmm.
could play a key role in that preparation. It's like they're helping to clear out the static so those psychedelic signals can come through more clearly.
That's a really interesting idea and definitely something that deserves more research. As we learn more about psychedelic medicine, understanding the connection between inflammation, neurochemistry, and how well the therapies work, it's going to be really important.
It feels like this is a place where ancient wisdom and modern science can come together to create a whole new model for mental health and well-being. It's pretty exciting to think about all the possibilities.
I agree. The future holds so much potential, and it's amazing to see how these, kind of humble mushrooms
Hmm.
might be a part of this new era of healing and understanding.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of medicinal mushrooms and brain health. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.